Hello and welcome to the Trending Now podcast on CHCH Podcast. I'm your host, Louie Butko, and thank you for joining us as we take a look at the week that was on Trending Now, which you can catch every Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. and 11:30 on CHCH.com and streaming live on our YouTube page on Trending Now. Coming up on today's show, the latest from Gaza as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says they will not agree to a ceasefire until all the hostages are released, while 450 Canadians remain in the territory. Trending Now host Matt Ingram joins us with more in just a second. In trending sports this week, the Texas Rangers win their first ever World Series, ending a 61-year title drought, but this year's matchup had the lowest ratings of any World Series in history. Is that cause for concern for MLB? Matt and I will discuss coming up. And the Beatles, yes, the Beatles released what is being called their last song ever, thanks to the help of artificial intelligence. Unnecessary, creepy, or just a sign of the times. But we start in Israel, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no temporary ceasefire in the Gaza Strip until Hamas releases all of its hostages. Netanyahu spoke shortly after meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who tried to convince the Israelis to pause in their offensive to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza and protect civilians from its attacks. Thousands packed into a square in Beirut, Lebanon, to watch a televised speech by Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, who praised the Hamas attack on Israel 4 weeks ago. He says the fighting on the Lebanon-Israel border would not be limited to its current scale. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Bill Blair says Canadian officials are working hard to get about 450 Canadians and their families out of Gaza. He says consular officials and the Canadian Armed Forces are working closely with officials in Israel and Egypt to get people to safety. Foreign passport holders have been allowed to cross into Egypt for the past 3 days, but no Canadians have been allowed out of Gaza so far. And to discuss this, we bring in the host of Trending Now. That's Matt Ingram. And Matt, I know we said it 3 weeks, every Friday we've been coming on here saying, when is this ground defense going to start? It has started. What's the latest we've heard?
Yeah, it started. The quote yesterday from one of the generals was they have completed their encirclement of Gaza City, which they say is the main base of operations for Hamas's leadership, taking in what they called significant areas of Gaza. What they mean by that exactly, I'm not sure. Nobody really is. So they're in there. There's been reports of fierce fighting. Of course, there's still a very significant civilian population in and around there. So we're seeing more horrific images of buildings being destroyed. Israel's military says that it's going after Hamas infrastructure in the Gaza Strip, specifically in the north of the Strip. You may remember a few weeks ago, civilians were asked at the beginning of the war to head south. They supposedly were going to be more safe there, but as we know, as things have played out, there's nowhere safe in Gaza.
What was this about a refugee camp that was bombed?
This got a lot of traction this week. The Jabalia refugee camp is a settlement that has existed since 1948, when the original proclamation of the State of Israel came out. This was set up for the people displaced by the creation of the original State of Israel to live, and descendants of the people who were forced from their homes still live there to this day. It was hit 3 times in a row this week. Israel says, and they've said this for a very long time, that Hamas uses the population as a human shield. So they claim that they did, in fact, kill Hamas members and leaders in the Jabalia refugee camp and other refugee camps. To be honest, it's happened before, not just this week. So I don't know why this became such a talking point this week in the war. As horrific as it is to say, it has happened before. One significant development yesterday was the UN coming out and saying in the past 24 hours, that 4 of its UN-sponsored schools in Gaza, schools that are being used to shelter displaced people, because remember I said they're being asked to head from the south to the north. So places where you're supposed to go for safety, 4 of them had been damaged because of Israeli airstrikes in the last 24 hours. 20 plus people killed, which is a very small amount compared to the overall death toll. But man, it really says something that the places where people are supposed to go for safety are still getting hit by airstrikes.
I started the show by saying Benjamin Netanyahu will not even think about the idea of pausing we've heard a lot of the ceasefire. That's the word we're hearing.
Yeah.
Until all of the October 7th hostages have been released. The number's sitting at about 240 still. We haven't had any real releases in the last few weeks.
No.
Are they concerned about the amount of hostages still? And getting in and getting these hostages out?
Absolutely. I mean, there's been a lot of talk. You see relatives of hostages talking almost daily to the media. There's major concern about these people. However, like you say, there were 4 released, 2 Americans and then 2 Israelis. And then since then, nothing. Now, I know the U.S. government had been asking Israel to pause its invasion, so the ground offensive part, in the hopes that more negotiations could be completed and more people could be freed. That didn't happen. No one else has been freed. There is some reporting that suggests Hamas was open to giving more hostages up in exchange for humanitarian pauses, but that seems to have not happened.
Where do we go from here? I know I ask you this every week, but I mean,
that's a great question.
This ceasefire, like I said, we've heard that word a lot. It seemed like the Americans were trying to say it, Antony Blinken trying to say it without saying it.
Yeah.
Ceasefire. We're seeing John Kirby go in front of the press almost every day, and pushing back on it. It's a pretty divisive topic right now, ceasefire to get Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, and I mean, I think most people on the front of it see, well, yeah, that just makes sense. Why not take a humanitarian pause? Now, I'm no soldier. I don't know much about the military, but from what I understand, the reporting suggests that a humanitarian pause, a ceasefire, Israel is saying would allow Hamas time to regroup, time to get ready for another wave of fighting, which I guess makes a lot of sense. But, at the same time, there is this growing call from the international community for weeks now for a ceasefire. I mean, the UN has called for it over and over and over again. There were multiple resolutions that failed at the Security Council calling for a ceasefire. But I think that is just kind of indicative of the power of the United States in its support of Israel. It doesn't matter that the UN's calling on Israel to do this. The U.S. is supporting the war effort, continues to give arms. I mean, just last night in the House in Washington, they approved a spending bill, $14 billion for Israel. Now, as I understand it, the bill is going to be dead on arrival because
the IRS cuts that they want to make.
Yeah, and Biden said he's going to veto it. Notably, not that we've forgotten about the war in Ukraine, but certainly it's not getting the attention. That bill did not include any funding for the war in Ukraine, nor did it include any funding for humanitarian relief for Palestinians. So there were a number of issues with that. But even still, I think it's pretty certain that America at some point will approve another massive arms package for Israel.
How is the dysfunction in Washington? The 4 weeks without a speaker, this new guy, and all of the things he has said in the past. Yeah. How has that dysfunction in Washington affected how the U.S. can respond to this?
Well, as you might imagine, they can't pass these bills for important funding measures like more weapons for Israel, more weapons for Ukraine, humanitarian relief for Palestinians. However, of course, that's not to give a civics lesson, but that's the congressional, that's the legislative branch of their government. The executive branch, the president, Antony Blinken, they are definitely still proceeding ahead with everything that they say they want to do in terms of supporting Israel. So there's definite dysfunction going on, but on the president's side, on the executive side, they're definitely still doing everything that they say they're going to do to support Israel.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the spending bill. I quickly brought up the IRS because tied into that spending bill would be a cut in the IRS services. And it was interesting. Steve Ratner, he's a financial analyst for MSNBC, and he said, these are going to cost this $14 billion spending bill. It's going to end up costing Americans $26 billion because of all the the IRS cuts, you're not going to be able to get over, those people who are evading their taxes, especially the 1% in the U.S. Who do that. Just the latest in the last hour, the IDF has confirmed that they have struck a convoy of ambulances that were carrying wounded people to Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. The IDF says, yes, we did, saying that it was being used by Hamas. The WHO, that's the World Health Organization, he's the Director General, says he's utterly shocked by those reports. And again, the UN, there's not much they can do.
No, I mean, they've said that. I mean, and I'm just hearing about that report. That's shocking. I mean, I can't imagine the justification for hitting a series of ambulances, no matter what the situation. So it'll be interesting to hear more about that particular reporting. But just yesterday, the United Nations spokesperson in New York he gives a noon briefing every day to update the world on a number of issues, but of course Israel taking over. He said on the hospital situation, Al-Shifa, one called the Indonesian hospital, they're out of stuff. They're out of fuel. They're out of critical supplies. They are having immense difficulty treating the patients that are coming to them. And unless fuel gets in, unless there's actual outside help, the UN can't do much.
And we've been saying there's been 4 trucks let in at a time, basically. There's made sure that there's no fuel on these trucks. The IDF is going on and making sure there's no fuel. And meanwhile, the UN is saying we need thousands of trucks arriving daily for the amount of aid that's needed.
Absolutely. I mean, before this all happened, for people who might not know about this, Gaza was receiving, I think it was more than 100 truckloads of aid a day in peacetime, just to keep the population going. So now they've had, so many days where they got nothing, and then there's been this trickle of aid that's come in. Of course, it's nowhere near what's needed.
Yeah, just an IDF spokesperson says a number of Hamas fighters were killed in the strike, and that, quote, more detailed information was shared with allies. They said, again, quote, we have information which demonstrates that Hamas's method of operation is to transfer terror operatives and weapons in ambulances, adding, we emphasize that this area is a battle zone. Civilians in the area are repeatedly called upon to evacuate southwards for their own safety. And, we've talked about this just being in news. Some of the images, obviously the images that we see are awful, that we put on TV. But that's not even a fraction of what we see here.
And I mean, let's call that out for a second. They keep telling people to go to the south, except, daily, if you're watching the reports on Trending Now, they're bombing southern areas.
Yeah.
And then you hear heartbreaking reports from civilians who went south, had nowhere to stay. There was no resources, so they've just returned to the north to their homes, and then they're getting bombed there too. So, the whole idea that there's anywhere safe in Gaza, I think the facts on the ground make that hard to believe, I would say.
Yeah. All right. Well, this war's not ending anytime soon, unfortunately. So I'm sure we'll be continuing to stay on this story here on Trending Now. Let's shift gears a little bit with you. It's something a little bit lighter. 63 years in the making, that being the Texas Rangers, who finally won the World Series. Took 6 scoreless innings. But the one thing I want to talk about is the ratings.
Yeah, it's the World Series
9 million people.
About.
9 million people. And there was a fear of this. Arizona, they're big markets in the States, but they're big local markets. They're not going to get the attention that a Philadelphia is going to get, or a New York team or an LA team. 9 million people. It's the lowest since Nielsen has been tracking. That's over the 5 games. If you were in the front office of MLB this week, would you be concerned?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anything that is entertainment driven, you got to have good audiences. Like, take the sports out of it. Anything with that is endeavoring to make money, entertaining people. Yeah, you want to have good ratings. I mean, hey, we work in TV. We want to have good ratings, right? That's just part and parcel. So yeah, I'd be a little concerned if I were them.
Well, and the thing was, I saw a tweet that said, 9 million people watched the World Series. 12 million people watched Roger Goodell list names, that being the NFL draft. 12 million people tuned in on an NFL draft on a Thursday, whatever day it was. I don't know, man. I think it goes back to the Blue Jays. Here they were in a run into the playoffs. They made the playoffs, but they're fighting those last few weeks. They were the most apathetic crowds in history. And they can say they've sped up the game. They can say, it's easier to watch, but I don't know, man. Baseball, I'd be a little concerned right now.
Well, you're the sports guy.
I pretend to be.
In a past life. How interested were you in this?
No, I didn't watch a single minute.
Yeah.
I didn't watch a single minute. And maybe that makes me a bad sports person.
No.
But I don't know, man. Like, I think, so sports are so in your face, like, all the time. And, like, the teams I cheer for, like the Maple Leafs. Like, the Maple Leafs played a great game last night against the Bruins, but I just don't care because it's not going to matter until the playoffs.
True.
And I was at a pasta dinner for my little cousin's hockey team. And my cousin's like, he's like 8 years old, really wants to go to a Leaf game. So there's a silent auction. I was one of the first ones. So Leaf tickets, $300, 100 section, sure. 100 levels. And then like every time somebody bid, he'd be coming up to me and be like, can you put 400 down? Can you put 450 down? Can you put 500 down? And I'm like, no, buddy.
You're getting grinded, man.
Well, like, I think about it. Here we are, we're talking about inflation. We're talking about, the cost of your rent, your mortgage going up. Some people need to readjust those with where we are. The discretionary funds, I don't have a lot of motivation to put them into sports right now, especially a sport where guys are making millions. There's 82 chances to go see them. And same thing with the Leafs. The Leafs have priced me out completely.
Oh, I hear you.
I cannot afford to go to a Leaf game.
Oh, me neither. I don't know too many people who can. I've been to one Leaf game probably in the last 6 years, and I won the tickets.
Yeah.
I took my eldest daughter to her first Leaf game, but honestly, it was all about we got the free tickets, so... Hey, of course we're going to go, And still, they were the bloody nosebleeds, and it was fine. I'm not complaining, but it's like, that gives you an idea, like, and sorry, I should say, they were like $100 tickets.
Yeah. And then you go there, and can I get a beer? That'll be $15.
Oh,
can I get a popcorn? That'll be $20.
That's why I think, wearing your Tie Cats sweater, I still think the Cats... dollar for dollar, that's bang for your buck, man.
Yeah.
Go to a Cats game.
What, are you paid by them or something?
Well, I know. Well, what can I say? I mean,
speaking of the Tie Cats, like I said, they do got a big game this weekend, Saturday. Forge FC, by the way. We're going to get to that in just a second. But, I don't know. I had zero interest in the baseball this year.
Well,
I don't know what it was, but we're supposed to hate Texas, I guess, as Blue Jays fans.
I know.
Some sort of beef.
It feels like an old one, but Adolis Garcia, he was fun to watch because I didn't watch any of the games.
Before he got hurt.
Yeah. But, I would go to the gym in the morning and kind of watch the highlights muted. That was enough for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel compelled to then like, oh man, where am I going to watch the game, bro? Yeah. Like,
or it was flipping through the channels and what else is on? Commercial break, like watching a bit and then commercials and then just completely forgetting.
Let's see what CHCH has on.
I want to get to this story too. The Beatles.
Oh, man.
Had a new song. The song called Now and Then came out yesterday, decades after John Lennon wrote it and more than 50 years after the band split. That's the other thing about the Beatles. They were only together for such a short time, right? Lennon recorded a demo of his vocals for the song in the late 70s, assassinated in 1980, but his widow, Yoko Ono, gave the demo to the remaining Beatles members in 1994. The track was then worked on by Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison for a year, but they couldn't separate Lennon's voice from the sound of a piano in the track. Now, after Harrison died in 2001, it took McCartney and Starr more than 2 decades to begin working on the song again, and technical restoration methods that separated the Beatles' voices from background sounds during the making of the 2021 documentary series The Beatles Get Back were used to isolate Lennon's voice from the original cassette. I mean, that's there's AI, right? And we've talked about this, like, your emails have artificial intelligence right now. Spell check is artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's assuming that you spelt the word wrong or, but this is, I don't really mind the use of AI in a situation like that.
I don't mind this at all. Like, I mean, I got to admit, all I saw was the headline when I came in the other day. And it's like, okay, new Beatles music. I'm like, all right, I want to hear this. Like, let's listen to this. And you start listening to it and you're like, wow, this sounds like them. Like, how'd this all work? And the more you learn about it, like, I mean, it is pretty cool that they're able to separate. Like, I heard a little sample of the original cassette and Lennon's playing the piano in the background. And it sounds beautiful, but it's a cassette. from the 70s. Like, it ain't that great.
That Yoko Ono was holding on to for 25 years.
It could have been in a bloody shoebox in the closet. Like, we really don't know.
Yeah.
So for them to be able to use that technology to bring this back, like, it's almost eerie when you listen to it. And they just dropped the music video for it today, which, if you get a chance to check it out, it's crazy, man. They've put in all of them. It's obviously Harrison and Lennon from the glory days, and then McCartney and Starr from the current days. So it's kind of a weird little grouping, but you see them all together again on the screen, sounding like the Beatles. I mean, I'm not even a huge Beatles fan, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Legally, we can't play it for you.
Yeah.
I don't know much about trademark laws on podcasts. I probably should. I probably should know these. I just don't do it. I'm not going to play a song 'cause it's going to be pulled from the podcast right away.
Lucky for our audience, they can go to the Trending Now YouTube page and watch our Trending Now coverage and our interview with Eric Alper, the music publicist, who had a lot of interesting things to say, including talking about the fact that, some uses of AI musicians are very much against. Whereas this use of AI, I think everybody's cheering.
I think so too.
I love this picture of them too.
Yeah,
I know people on the podcast can't see, but this is a great
they
bloody
might be
picture.
watching on YouTube.
Yeah,
they might be watching on YouTube. Hey, what's up?
That's pretty good.
Before we go, I appreciate you being here. But before we go, I want to give a special shout out to the boys of Forge FC. That is Hamilton's very own professional soccer team, who last Saturday, in one of the best soccer games I've ever seen, clinched.
I'm so sad.
This was awesome. This is my phone footage, so I know I can use this.
There you go.
So this was on the pitch, as they say in soccer. I've been a couple of these moments now with these guys, and it was a lot of fun celebrating, and the entire organization in Hamilton obviously very excited, partied well into the night. I'm told.
Were you there for the first three? Because this is their fourth championship.
I was in there. I was there in person for one of them. That was the one in PEI. But this was a really cool moment, and I didn't get to lift the trophy, but I said I got to lift Kyle Becker, who's the captain.
That's pretty cool.
We came in for a hug on the pitch afterwards, and I lifted him up, and I'm like, that's as good for me as lifting the trophy, because I didn't really do anything to win the trophy.
Which is fair, but I mean,
I didn't do anything to lift the trophy.
I love Forge because it's a team that, and if I correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but as I understand, their attendance figures have gone up again this year.
Yes.
It's a team that Hamilton is getting behind. I went to my very first Forge FC game this year with my dad. Yeah, me and my dad went, and we had a great time, man. And then, so I'll just, real quick.
$30 to get in, couple beers. You get the $5 beers if you go early.
I would have been there, but I had my kids for the weekend, and so, and they were sick, so we're doing like Disney movies and, puking in dad's kitchen. Oh, man.
You had a weekend.
Whoa, I had a weekend. Yeah, it was crazy.
How did you make up for the lack of candy that they...
Dude,
were they missing out? Did they feel like they missed out?
I think so, a little bit. Like, they were a little bummed. They're younger, right? But so I tried to give them a nice day, but like, they're puking and shit. So I get them to bed, and then I check my phone, and I have all these messages like, did you see what happened? Did you see? And then I go to Twitter and I see...
Oh, the goal.
Oh, my God.
The goal.
Oh, my God.
And Bubba can attest to this. I don't know. Bubba might be here already, and he can come in and yell that he can attest to this. Because he was doing the Ticats game from the stadium.
Right.
They were playing in Montreal. They played in Montreal again tonight in the playoffs. We'll get to that in a second. But we were sitting there. Ticats game had ended, so Bubba's in the press box. And I was kind of standing up the whole time because I was in a tight little space. This guy who... There's assigned seating at the press box, okay?
Yeah.
Louie, Butko, CHCH, seat number 4. So I get there, and he's in, seat 4.
Oh, come on.
And I'm like, I casually mentioned, seat 4, okay. So I go over there, and the guy doesn't move. Guy does not move. I don't know who he was. I don't know who he was with, but he was in my spot the whole time. So I was standing there, and the corner kick was lined up with Tristan Borges, and I said... This is going to go directly into the net.
No way.
Olympico goal from the corner. It's going to be the highlight of the year for Hamilton. Sure enough, sits there, ball goes in, fireworks go off, and Bubba was ready, because he was above me.
Yeah.
Because it's a 2-tiered thing. He was ready to reach across and, grab me and shake me. But I called it.
That's amazing.
And like I said, I think I've spent enough time in that stadium. It was my home away from home.
Did you feel it coming on the moment?
As soon as I saw Tristan Borges, because he had scored a goal like that, from the exact same spot in year one.
Yeah.
And it was the best goal, like Olympico goal. Like it's
Amazing.
And I called it. It was a 1-1 game. It was an extra time. The some of the pictures, some of the edits that I've seen with the Titanic music or the Moneyball music, just really cool. And I'm really happy for Bobby Smirniotis. He's the head coach. Kit and Johan and David Edgar, the assistant coaches, and Kyle Becker, like, a man crush on Kyle Becker. Like, it's not even like he's a great dude. He's a great representative, an Oakville kid. Had a great career in the MLS and has been stellar for Forge FC. One of the greats. So congratulations, Forge FC.
Go Forge.
And hopefully,
yes,
it motivates the guys in black and gold this weekend who have a huge game against Montreal. Yeah, it's going to be Matthew Schiltz who gets the start above Bo Levi Mitchell, so we'll see how it goes. But that's a 3 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. And, of course, the Grey Cup coming up to Hamilton.
Coming up.
Whether or not the Ticats are in it, that's a different question. But I'm looking forward to the Shaggy concert, Carrie Underwood.
I was surprised Carrie Underwood. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And, yeah, Shaggy. I mean, come on, Shaggy.
I don't know what he's gonna play after it wasn't me and the other one, Angel.
Oh yeah, right.
Because I feel like you can't start with those because then everyone would leave right away.
Well, that's true. He's got those 2 songs and then that's it, man.
He must have other songs.
It's pretty great though, like the whole Grey Cup festival and everything. I mean, you're getting Green Day for the game.
Yeah, right before they go on tour.
It's pretty solid, man.
Like they release a new album.
Yeah.
They announce the Grey Cup, and then they go on tour. They're going to be at the Rogers Center in a few months.
It's a solid month for Hamilton. We got the CPL champions.
It's a great month.
Yeah,
it's November. It's November. I can't believe that either, man. Today was a beautiful day. So today was like, okay, it still felt a little October-y because it's sunny, it's bright, it's like 15.
Yeah.
But it's November 3rd.
Oh, dude, I broke out the crazy winter coat the other day. I was so cold, and I was like, to hell with this. I'm just doing it. So I have this. I got my on-air start in Sudbury, and when I moved up there, I'm a Southern Ontario kid, and I knew nothing about Northern Ontario. So I go up there, and I buy this like -30 rated coat, these like crazy boots, and all this stuff. And I literally broke it out the other day because I was like, I can't do this. I can't roll like this.
I mean, like, it's cold. Like, my landlord's like bleed the rads.
Okay.
Because it's an older apartment, so you gotta, like, she's like, I turned the heat on for the first time, which again, it was like late October.
Yeah.
And she's like, I turned the heat on for you. I'm like, thanks. I could have used it 2 weeks ago where it was like -5. But you gotta bleed the rats.
Right.
Which for the first 5 years I lived in that building, I didn't know how to do.
That's funny.
It was never explained to me. She always said it, like, hey, the heat's on, make sure you bleed the rats. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, sure, okay.
And then last year she came in, she's like, have you done it yet? I'm like, yeah. And so she went in and she did. She's like, no, you didn't. And now my apartment's like 1,000 degrees. It was always too cold, and now it's too hot.
Well, it's funny. I also have radiators in my old building I live in. Yeah.
Hey, it's the community.
And dude, the landlord turns it on, and he'd already messaged me. He's like, hey, first couple of days, because I just moved. It's a new building for me. He's like, first couple of days, like, we got to do the balancing. So, like, let me know if you're too hot, too cold.
Yeah.
Dude. This guy, it was, I have a little portable thermometer. It was 25 degrees.
Oh.
I woke up and I was like, hi. And I sent the nicest, most like, hi, I'm Matt. Like, super, super kind. And yes, he turned it down, and now I can finally breathe again.
I grew up in a 100-year-old drafty house. Like, my parents' house that they still live was built in 1911. And it was cold. It's drafty. It's old. And my dad is a cheap bastard. So he always has the house kept at like 61 or 62.
Yeah.
And I grew up with that. So I love that. I'd much rather be cold than hot.
I had a very
and now
similar
anytime I go somewhere where it's like the heat is set normally, like 71 or 72, like my ears go red. I get really hot. Like I just can't. I'm not really good at hot.
I prefer it cold too, because like I have young children, and when they come and stay with me, I'm just on my feet the whole time chasing them. So I'm hot all the time, running around after these little kids,
trying to rattle them.
It's like, please cold it down in here, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, we managed. In case you're wondering, I guess I should have let people know.
I guess
there was a bit of a bug going through here on Trending Now.
There was.
I had a great time hosting for you on Tuesday.
That was part of my
on our Halloween. Yeah.
Horrific.
Coincidentally, your kids were sick on the day you had to come in costume. Yeah. My clown costume did go over well in the office.
Dude, good on you for doing it. I thought you looked great.
Thanks.
I thought it was a fun show. Laura and I had talked last week about doing a fun Halloween episode. I was totally down. But yes, my children on Halloween day, I'm driving them back to their mothers.
Yeah.
And I'm sick too. We're all sick. Whatever.
I mean, you have kids. So I feel like you're always sick when you have kids.
You're pretty much, when you have young kids,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
5 and 3, I'm 10 minutes from their mother's place in Toronto. 10 minutes. And there's been nothing but puking for 4 days. So why should it not end with more puking? My poor son, I look back and he starts crying.
Pukes?
Is that?
I don't know.
Is that a thing?
Some people don't like that word. Some people don't like that word.
Mouth?
Yeah, okay. Well,
Mouth stuff? I don't know. Like, does that work? All right.
Yeah.
So he, humongously pukes all over my back seat, and it's downtown Toronto at rush hour, so there's nowhere for me to pull over. I'm absolutely screwed. And the poor guy, he's sitting there crying, and I'm like, "Oh, buddy, I'm sorry. We're almost at your mom's. It'll be
So
okay."
I'm not driving your kids because I got a new car, by the way. I have a chip on my windshield.
Already?
Took 3 weeks.
Damn.
403, truck, rock, windshield. Not a good combo.
Damn. Well, don't let anyone puke in your car.
I won't.
This morning I got in.
I don't even allow passengers.
I
in my car.
shampooed the carpet the other morning.
Still.
It's still not a pretty smell. Ugh. I don't know what
And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us. We will be back next week on the Trending Now podcast.
Yes.
In the meantime, it was a busy week for newsmakers as well. We had our first triple guest week. You can catch a brand new episode of Newsmakers with Nate Erskine-Smith. You can catch a brand new episode with Ted McMeekin and Greg Dunnett. Speaking of Great Cup Festival and all that fun stuff, Greg Dunnett, Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, my guest this week as well. So wherever you found this show, that being the Trending Now podcast, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other shows we have for you. If you missed any episodes, you can go to chch.com/podcasts or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Just search CHCH Podcasts. Matt, thanks so much for coming on. Doing the whole show with me today.
Yeah.
We got to do this all the time.
I'd be fine.
All right, good. Thank you to Mike Corsten. Thank you to Bill. Rolling the prompter. Appreciate it. And thank you to you for checking us out on the Trending Now podcast. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a great weekend.